Hospitals. Mr. Vasudevan established AyurVAID Hospitals in 2005, committed to pioneer and the transformation of Ayurveda into a mainstream system of medicine. AyurVAID has pioneered an end-to-end classical Ayurveda-based process documentation outcomes-driven medical sciences business model that is approved by all leading health insurance companies and the central government for cashless Ayurveda treatments. Rajiv was privileged to be a member of the first technical committee set up by the formulation of NABH standards for Ayurveda hospitals in 2009. He is currently chairman of the CII Ayurveda Group, serves as co-chair of the Healthcare Sector Skills Ayush Sub-Council, and has served on several committees, expert groups constituted by the Government of India. We are once again welcome Mr. Rajiv Vasudevan to be part of this panel. We would also request members to kindly mute themselves and join this interaction. In case you have questions, we request you to kindly write your questions in the chat mode. After the interaction, after the presentation given by Mr. Vasudevan, we will hear you. He will take up all your questions in the chat and respond to you. May I request Mr. Vasudevan to please give his presentation.
Good morning, everybody. Namaste. Can you hear me clearly? First of all, Rakhi, can you hear me in the CII Secretariat?
Okay, sir.
You can hear me. Okay. Okay, great. So good morning to everyone. I would like to thank CII, the entire team for thinking up this very innovative way to reach out to the CII extended family across the country. And it's a privilege to share the Ayurveda perspective in times which are pretty tough at this point because of the overall situation personally, professionally, for society at large. In this context, what does Ayurveda really posit? So let me begin by a reminder that some of the greatest epidemiologists of the world are reminding us today that when we talk of this particular present pandemic that we have, where does it arise from? Right? So I'm going to be covering this agenda, but this agenda has been shared with you. So as you go in, it'll become pretty clear. I'm going to take about 60 minutes to cover this part and followed by questions and answers. So if you really look at it, it's important to know that when we rush into work today in contemporary 21st century, when we are surrounded by all kinds of technology gadgets, we tend to forget our origins. And therefore, it is important to look at this tree of life. This tree of life is a picture from the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. And what it tells us is something very simple. From the very first single cellular life organism that existed on our planet to us today, we are at the center of this particular circle. All the species on Earth today share some part or more of their DNA with each other. That's the amazing fact, which we forget, that we come from very common origins, and life is not just human beings living on Earth, but it is a ecosystem. It is a biosystem where everybody has to learn to live in harmony. When that harmony is disturbed, you get all kinds of natural disasters to happen. And we tend to forget it. We look at it a temporary inconvenience to our life. We look at a major inconvenience to many people's lives, and then say that, look at this, what happened? But it's a time to pause. And therefore, we should realize in the cycle of time, we tend to forget our 70 years, 80 years, 100 years, whatever be our lifespan, that we are barely a wink of an eyelid, not even that, in the beginning of wink of an eyelid in the era of time. So if we really look at it, 4.5 billion years back, the solar system was formed, and human beings came only 200,000 years back. So if you really go back, the Big Bang happened 14.5 billion years back. Human beings come only 2 lakh years back. And our speech and other things started about 6,000, 8,000 years back. So we are a very recent species. We tend to forget that we coexist with a lot of other animals. So keeping this as background, we come to the hard reality today, right? It's a blitz. why I see a blitz? It's a total bombing of the human system when the COVID virus, the nCoV-2 virus, enters the body. Today, initially it was said it comes through the nose and then enters the respiratory tract, goes to the lungs, and so on. But now today, people are in Western medicine trying to figure out where does it come from, how does it go in, how does it dissipate across the system, how does it distribute itself and damage the system. It's a total all-out attack, right? So in this scenario, we are realizing the lungs, the liver, the kidneys, intestines, brain, eyes, nose, heart, and blood vessels, right, are all being attacked. Now, as the days come by, as the data is more and more systematically collected, as on data, about 1,000 papers have come out, but we really don't know a lot more about not just the virus, but also about the patients who are, subject to certain higher complications. So from the data available, we are trying to paint a picture and present a picture to you in terms of how Ayurveda can deal with this, both in terms of prophylaxis, which is prevention, and also in terms of early stage, compensation of the complications that may arise from it. While the primary treatment would continue from mainstream medicine as an adjuvant therapy, what is the potential? So if you look at this, I just want to give 2 or 3 slides to make you realize that if you look at the progression of the disease, we have a situation where we have the asymptomatic phase, which comes to the left of the graph. Then we have a 1 to 14-day period when the symptomatic phase is when the symptoms don't show, but I'm infected. After that 1 to 14 days, I get into what is called the viral response phase. And then there is during that phase, and these number of days are not very precisely fixed. It depends on the human being's ability to fight back against the virus. So then we have the pulmonary phase, where basically the attack begins in the lungs and the inflammation begins. And when this inflammation goes into a very aggressive phase, you have the mother of all battles happening between the human body and the virus. And very often the virus is winning in some categories of people, and then it goes into the hyperinflammation phase when it attacks across the body, wherever the blood vessels are going. So this is the nature of the attack which is happening. So asymptomatic, early infection with viral response, which is the early part, which is just trying to do a viral, trying to kill the virus. The body is trying to do that. Then the pulmonary response, where the pulmonary attack is happening, and the higher battle happens, and then finally the inflammation, when typically people give up. So if you look at this, it's very important to understand, therefore, that we are tending to focus on the acute and emergency care part. That's when people are being admitted to hospitals and being given life-saving care, right? So when you look at the fact that what is in our control, when you look at immunity, right, we need to understand it in the spectrum of care, which is, we look at primary prevention. I leave out primal prevention for now. Primary prevention is, how do I keep myself safe from getting the infection? How do I keep myself stronger so that even if the disease comes? So our primary focus right now will be primary prevention. I want to tell that, which is basically health promotion and right behaviors to avoid contact, contract, and development of any specific disease. Now, if I don't do my primary prevention properly, I will end up contracting the virus, right? We'll come to what we need to do to not contract. Now, given that we contract, we get into a stage which is basically what we told earlier, the viral response phase. I have the early, and the very dangerous part, which is there, is the first many days after infection, I will remain asymptomatic. And the data is quite compelling. I'll tell you that in the next slide. So when that infection is happening, if I can catch it early and nip it in the bud so that it does not progress to an acute and emergency, then that is a great achievement. Can we do that? What is happening today? And then I go to acute emergency care. We realize now that of the people, total people, by the end of this cycle, right, by the time herd immunity is acquired, we believe, about the latest data in a study, in a paper which has come out 2 days back, is 65% of Indians will have to get infected by the virus to get herd immunity. But of the people who get it, only 80% of them will develop only mild or moderate symptoms. It's only that 20% which is going into acute and emergency care. 3 to 5% will die, and 15% to 17% will go into what is called the tertiary prevention mode, which is very, very important, because what is happening today, it is not just the illness, but the ventilator treatments, the strong medicines are also damaging some parts of the body, because to save a life, for a, the lesser evil is to do something else to save a life. But in the process, the life quality post-discharge from the hospital is likely to be compromised. So there is also tertiary prevention. We need to keep all this in mind, because it's a continuum of care. So when you talk about cure, we often tend to forget that cure itself is part of a continuum of disease prevention, where I can nip it in the bud, where I can prevent it at all from contracting it. And finally, after I have got the disease, how to prevent the recurrence of the disease and how to restore good health post-disease. This is the continuum of care. And I think we should look at this in totality. And Ayurveda is able to really help in primary prevention, in secondary prevention, and tertiary prevention. And I would say that promotive care at the body, mind, spirit, detoxification, if in case I have medicines and strong drugs in the body, cleaning up the body, convalescence. And therefore, what is the data on the table today? Very important, just a summary which applies to human beings, to industries, etc. The flattening the curve is something which has become a big buzzword today. But the fact is, it is not going to change it is going to flatten the curve. It is not changing potentially the number of people who are going to contract the virus. It's just going to spread it over a longer period of time, so that the ability to respond to the infections and the complications thereof is more within our control, right? The fact we have a gestation period of 1 to 14 days, this is WHO data, right? Some people, and on an average 5 days to manifest the symptoms. What is the implication? Post-COVID, when I'm walking out, I may be meeting somebody who looks absolutely fine, who may be able to infect me. In turn, I may be getting something I may not know. In turn, I may infect somebody. So the study which has come out from Dr. Jayaprakash Mulil, his data is that, based on the models that they have, for a given person who is infected, that they find coming to the hospital, they're telling there are probably 65 people walking around who are asymptomatic but infected. That is the data. Similarly, Maharashtra, one data which came, of the total COVID positive patients, when they came in and got tested, out of the people who are total COVID positive, 81% in one particular study said were asymptomatic COVID positive. That means it's a real risk, real and present danger, that people whom we meet may be asymptomatic and infected. And also, the quality of tests has been told across the board in all the countries. There are sometimes you may get false negatives, right? So when you say that somebody is not infected, he may actually be infected. Herd immunity only at 65% of the population, which may take, I mean, these models are all statistical models. It could take 1 year, 1.5 years, 2 years, so on, whatever that number. Now, the very important data, of those infected, 80% develop mild, moderate symptoms. 15 to 17 severe, 3 to 5% die. And the other important part, 17% of the patients, COVID patients, are more than 60 years of age, but 63% of those who die, right? Due to multiple reasons. We won't go into that. And the people who are COVID positive, when they go to the hospital with complications, 1/3 have a history of lung disease, 1/3 have a history of diabetes, half the people who go there have a history of hypertension. So this is a very important fact that is there very clearly. And the standard of care which is currently available is very tough on the body, on one's mind, depression, anxiety across the board, and on the spiritual aspects, because once suddenly things, one is completely gone. Life in a moment has changed. So what are the takeaways we have to remember is exposure is inevitable, and post lockdown, we have to be prepared for that. The paranoia of infection is constant, and external protection is very clear that we have personal protection equipment, hand wash, social distancing. This has to be done, no question about it. For the foreseeable future, we all have to change the way we live. This is all known. But what is being missed is the nature of internal protection, immunity, right? That is the key part that Ayurveda can significantly help, because that is helping across from primal prevention, secondary prevention, tertiary prevention. Across the board, this internal immunity is something which Ayurveda can do. It is possible to do risk stratification, where you have, based on the risk factors upon various stages of the disease, one can go with a very focused approach. A personalized risk mitigation is possible. It is not a generalized risk mitigation. It is a personalized risk mitigation. Therefore, I am not a sitting duck for the virus. I can do something about it. It's not a question. I'm making you a statement that we can do something about it. And how can Ayurveda help you in that? So if you look at immunity, there's a big diagram here. I just want you to understand the adaptive immunity is when the vaccines will come, or when I get infected by somebody else who's already a COVID patient. So let's leave out the adaptive immunity. This goes into the herd immunity, the maternal, if the mother gives to the child and so on. We leave that. We're talking about innate immunity. Innate immunity, non-specific, is general immunity, general health. So that irrespective of the disease, I have good ability to fight back as a system. Specific immunity is how do I build specific immunity to the COVID-19 disease. So both of these together come very well. Both the non-specific and the specific can be combined in an Ayurveda perspective, personalized to place and time, to give a model for building personal immunity to the COVID-19 virus. So let's look at that building innate immunity. When you look at the whole person, people typically talk of body, spirit, emotional, mind dimensions. But life is a little bit more complex. And we have to understand that when you look at a human being has got an intrinsic health potential. It's got a basic genetic profile that you're born with. The personal health behaviors, the diet and lifestyle. Lifestyle is not just whether I go to the gym and whether I play golf so many days a week or exercise how many times a week. Lifestyle is what I do 24 hours of the day, in what sequence I do. Do I do something before something, after something? Do I take bath after exercise? Do I take bath after food? Do I sleep after food? Every small thing. Do I sleep under AC? Do I sleep under fan? Do I not have a fan? All these things will come into lifestyle. What are the same behaviors, the diet and lifestyle, in Delhi, in Chennai, in Rajasthan, have totally different implications. The behavior is the same, but different implications. And the same behavior in a particular geography, irrespective of the geography, at a particular time, seasons of life, when you say the time of day, time of digestion, time of season, time of life. We don't have the time in this particular presentation, but suffice it to say, Ayurveda can really help to tell which behavior is appropriate for time of day, time of digestion, time of season. For example, we're just in the peak summer or the beginning of summer in some parts, and season of life, which is which age group we fall into. And it depends on what comorbidities we have and what we call the Rogi Roga Avastha, the disease patient status. Because I may be diabetic, my neighbor might be diabetic, a third person diabetic, but each one with the same HbA1c rating, fasting blood sugar rating, PPBS rating. But the progression of the disease may be differential in each one of them. Therefore, we need to bring all of this into a model which is a many causes, many effects, and where the effect itself becomes a cause. Very complex, but we want to simplify and say, give me a single cause, single effect thing. What is this virus? Go and kill the virus. So it's what I call a George Bush approach. You get the virus, give me the machine gun, I can go and shoot out the virus. But unfortunately, the virus doesn't, comply with our expectations. It's smarter than what we think. And therefore, the body is more powerful than the intelligence of our body, our mind, our spirit is much, much more than any drug can, provided we know how to leverage it. So Ayurveda is a most mature, evolved systems thinking applied to the health of a system. It's not just, Nadi Pariksha and then, Tambu ke niche, some Jadi Booty being given. It's a highly evolved science. Unfortunately, in the country of its origin, it's been reduced to a sham of a system over decades. But now it's seeing clear revival with the science of Ayurveda coming back mainstream, right? So I just want to disabuse you of an impression that you get by seeing some tent on the roads of Delhi or the roads of Bombay or any other city. Ayurveda is the most mature, the mother system of medicine in the world, from which the TCM arose, the Kampo medicine of Japan, the Korean medicine, even Hippocrates, they say goes back. The many principles have gone from here to ancient Greece. So I just want to say that it is an ancient, time-tested, proven system that is a living system of medicine today. It is not just something which is kept alive by artificially, resuscitated through by government support. It is by the will of the people of India and of the world that it lives today. So when you look at good health, right, it is not the absence of disease. It was in 1976 that the WHO came out with a definition that a unified, physical, mental, spiritual health. In that context, and societal health, etc., social societal health. Ayurveda goes back almost to 400 AD, when in Ashtanga Hridaya, there is this goes back to Shushruta Samhita. So older, which says, Samadosha Sama Agnischa Samadhatu Malakriya Prasanna Atma Indriya Manaha Swastha Ati Bhidiyate, which means one who's, simplifying it into English, one whose Agni or metabolism is in good shape. How do we know that? One whose sleep is proper, one sleep is not mentioned specifically in the shloka. Others are clear excretion, the absence of inflammation in the body, clear senses, being alert, being cheerful, optimistic, with, in modern terms, good stress management, overall vitality and energy, and well-being at physical, mental, spiritual levels. And again, in the modern context, we would say biochemical, physiological parameters within limits. This totality, when it comes, is when you have good health. Good health is not the absence of fever. Good health is not the absence of rheumatoid arthritis, right? It's not the absence of disease. It is the presence of positive qualities. And Ayurveda helps us to take towards all of this. So we have to understand that immunity, as we look at it, is not ingesting vitamins and iron tablets and some zinc supplements, magnesium supplements. If I have a deficiency in that, through a balanced diet, I can correct it. Immunity is this ability for a human being to achieve internal balance for his system as per his constitution, and with a dynamically changing environment. Today there is a virus, tomorrow there is a bacteria, day after tomorrow there is a weather change, there's a flood. All kinds of changes are happening in the dynamic environment. There could be stress at office, there could be stress at home. All of this together is acting upon the human being. Immunity, and I want to define that for you clearly, is the ability of the human being to restore balance when he is attacked by something from the dynamic environment. Right? Now, when that environment changes, internally, is my body able to respond to it? Secondly, there are another category, we should not give all the blame to external environment. There are many diseases where I create the problem by myself, a systemic disease, right? What we call a non-communicable disease, which is not caused by anything external. It is completely created by me. So how do I maintain physical, mental, spiritual harmony, right? In wake of a dynamically changing environment. Immunity is that ability to do. Can we build it? So the risk factors, which are very clearly coming on the basis of data, right? I've put in the bottom the latest findings as of 2 or 3 days back, that out of all the data that is emerging, a vascular connection with a blood vessel, that connection seems to be coming, and the fact that it is reaching the lungs, that lungs is the seat of action initially, is succeeded quickly by the kidneys and the heart, so on. Also, they can see that the liver is compromised. There is other metabolic issues. So you can see the spread which is happening across the body, including the brain, right? Because of the blood vessels and the attack which is happening and the immune response which is happening from the body, all these things are happening. So the key risk factors are inflammation, existing comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, obesity, and of course, age. Age is a clear thing which I mentioned in the next column. Immune compromise. If there is a cancer patient in the family, if somebody is a rheumatoid arthritis or psoriasis patient who has taken immunomodulators, who has taken steroids, NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory medicines, so on and so forth, they are people who are at higher risk. People with a lower respiratory tract infection, right from a COPD, from pneumonia history, interstitial lung disease, etc., to upper respiratory tract infections, which history or presence. So somebody with an active presence will have higher risk. Somebody with a history will have lower risk, but still does a risk. Metabolism is very key. As long as metabolism, and just last week, a paper has come out connecting the COVID-19 virus, the COVID-19 disease with the GI, gastrointestinal tract. So Ayurveda is really able to capture these multi-system approaches and multi-system findings and integrate into a coherent, cohesive framework. So when you look at the key risk factors, you're looking at, again, sleep and stress. Very important. We just ignore the fact that due to stress, when the sleep is impacted, the stress of COVID-19, the stress of job, the stress of economic, poverty, so on. And people with a smoking history, lung function is a clear thing which we need to really see, how we can address it. Overweight people, right, by more than 10 kilos over the normal weight, you can take a BMI, of that 18 to 24 is the recommended BMI. So 24 to 30 is overweight, greater than 30 is obese. So overweight people, waist hip ratio. If you just take somebody whose waist is more than 100 centimeters, you don't need to check anything. Automatically, you can say is at very severe risk. 90 to 100, I'm talking about males, 90 to 100 will be higher risk. For women, it is 10 centimeters lower. The thinner waist is about 10 centimeters. The risk is slightly on a more conservative, and we move to a lower waist range. Occupation is very important. Health workers, people in contact with potential infectors are at higher risk, and therefore it is very important to ensure that we have a stratified approach to target the high risk people to minimize the risk. Gender-wise, based on the data available, 30% only of the people who are 30% of the people who are getting the disease are women. 70% are male. It's not to say that women have naturally higher immunity. Maybe not. Possibly they're not as much in contact. But the fact is, this is the data today. So what are the principles based on which we will approach the prophylaxis? Know thyself, empower oneself, right? The whole idea of Ayurveda is, if I have the correct insight, if I can empower myself with the right insights, I have the right attitudes. If I have the right attitudes, I have the right behaviors. I have the right behaviors, I have the right results and the right outcomes. So if I want to stay safe of COVID-19, if I want to improve health, the first thing is to know how to build my internal armor, my internal immunity. So build and leverage innate immunity in general, right? That is across the board. How do we do that? Establish probable disease pathways for a given person. So based on the data, we can look at that. What are the current data on disease pathways? Anticipate. So what we're doing basically is to harness the body's ability to fight back. So we look at which subsystems are being attacked, what we call the srotases. We look at which doshas are affected. You'll understand what dosha, dhatu, etc. if we have time. So we understand which of the doshas are affected, which tissues are affected, which subsystems are affected, and what is the nature of the impact. And then in advance, through natural herbal medicines, we try to strengthen, bolster the defense, so that in the event an attack comes, the body is already prepared in advance. And the person shall not progress to a complication, because at an early stage, when the virus is weaker, you can hit it back and prevent it from taking. And why the job is easier? It is easier because 80% as it is are developing mild and moderate symptoms. So if I can be clearly part of the 80%, if I know that today I'm potentially part of the 20% or the 3%, if I do the right things today, I can be part of the 80%. And with right external protection, external immunity, that is the use of personal protection equipment, etc., I can ensure that I just don't get infected. And in the event I get infected, I have full protection. That is the mark of a wise person, to ensure that they do it with awareness, not out of fear, anxiety, paranoia. So therefore, Ayurveda's approach will be to protect the person, to support the person, and to nurture the person, positive health. Please remember, the disease is new. The human being is old. The human being goes back as far as life begins on the surface of this planet. But the principles of Ayurveda have not evolved 100 years back or 200 years back. It has been time tested over millennia. 2,600 years back, when Sushruta Samhita was written, it was the culmination of thousands of generations of mankind who had lived understood nature, man in relation to nature, the seasons, the other living organisms in the biosphere, and my interaction with each of them. This lesson in harmony, living in harmony, is Ayurveda. So it is an eternal principle which is contemporary, can be applied not only to India, the principles can be applied anywhere across the world because the principles are so broad-based. So if you look at the disease cycle, if you get it early, right, you can correct it today. If I'm marginal disease, if my risk is lower, right? So I should say Ayurveda's role across the disease life cycle or across the risk continuum. The early stage, I can correct it with diet and lifestyle corrections itself. In the event I have the beginning of some higher risk, about to mature risk, then I have to take diet, lifestyle, and medicine. And in the event I have chronic conditions like diabetes and hypertension, obesity, and so on, and hypothyroidism, you take, or asthma, rheumatoid arthritis, you take all this, then you need diet, lifestyle, medicine, and therapy. This totality of the four ahara, vihara, ushadha, kriya is called Ayurveda Chikitsa, which is the ultimate personalized health management system. So Ayurveda is not one pill to be popped in. It is not the Ayurveda massage. It is a scientific approach to personalizing intervention, which is diet, lifestyle, medicine, therapy. So the treatment of disease would be to avoid the general principles, avoid contributory factors, appropriate diet and lifestyle, which is, we'll come to we'll show you what is appropriate diet and lifestyle now. What are the medicines for alleviating symptoms in case I do want to do symptom alleviation? If I want to do root cause removal, I have to do the kriya kramas, which is basically the therapeutic interventions, which are basically the panchakarmas, which are preceded by the purva karmas. So the panchakarma helps us to do a deep system, whole body cleansing, depending on which part of the body or which subsystems of the body are affected. But to clean the body, before I do that, I need to prepare the body for that cleansing. So those purva karmas have to be done. What you typically would see in many of the centers, a bulk of the centers are the purva karmas. They are not the main karmas. The main panchakarmas are only 5. It's a big misunderstanding across the board that panchakarma is any Ayurveda application, and Ayurveda is all about oil application. Panchakarma is cleaning different 5 parts or 5 aspects of the body for different zones of the body, for which I do a variety of purva karmas to get the toxins accumulated into a particular part of the body from where it can be expelled out. It also tells, once I have cleaned the body, how do I, so Ayurveda has 2 objectives. One is to reverse disease, and once the disease is reversed, or for a healthy person, how do I maintain health and enhance health? And all of this is not a claim, as you will understand when you go to good Ayurveda doctors and facilities across the country, you will understand that Ayurveda good doctors treat the presenting complaint both in terms of the symptom and the root cause. I would ask you to pause often, whenever you're taking a medicine and say, am I treating the symptom of the disease or am I treating the root cause? And you might be surprised when the answer presents itself to you, right? So always focus on root cause treatments, because then you have a sustained disease reversal and a sustained well-being. So now getting to specific recommendations, I want to tell, typically we don't make recommendations in general, but these will apply for generally healthy 18 to 60-year-olds for those without these risk factors which I told here, the key risk factors, right? Without these key risk factors, if it is there, for those patients 18 to 60 years of age, we would recommend Sudarshan Ghanavati. It is an antimicrobial thing. It would digest any things which are already there. It would improve the overall immunity of the body, right? It perks up the entire system. It's a very simple, low-cost medicine. And for 10 days to take 2 tablets a day, it's a purely herbal medicine. Highly recommended. Dhanvantaram Guliga, which is basically carbonated and digestive, again for 10 days. So 10 days you take these 2 tablets after you finish your lunch, 1 tablet with a little bit of water, right? It's available in any store. Kushmanda Rasayana is something which is being recommended because it is a Rasayana. Rasayana is the wonder medicines of Ayurveda for promotive health. Rather than going and taking a zinc and a magnesium, all artificial chemicals, start going to natural, time-tested, what we say Chavan Prash is, for example, the Prash or the Rasayana which kept a particular sage young for unlimited number of years or many hundreds of years. So similarly, Kushmanda Rasayana, one medicine, one preparation is a brain tonic, it's neuroprotective, it is brain nourishing, cardioprotective. These are properties which are mentioned in the Indian pharmacopoeia. So I'm not just telling you something out of my head. These are properties which are assigned to it based on what are current laws of India. So it, in accordance with that, I'm telling you, it reduces inflammation in the body, strengthens tissues, it reduces cough, and is respiratory protective, antitussive. So one medicine will help for 21 days in general for people. Good thing. Ensure that you can look at Ushira. You can get this in the market. Ushira Panakam, mix it and drink. Amra, Amras type of Panakam. Buttermilk is very good. Tender coconut and buttermilk, by removing the ghee, the butter from it and the fat from it. Tender coconut. All of these are cooling in the current summer treatment. So this is valid for the next 2 months, April, May, and parts of June, where the summer still will exist. For those who need lung protection with history of comorbidities, immune compromise, they need to consult an Ayurveda physician. This is, in addition to this, they'll have to take something else. Or not just in addition, they may have to take a totally different prescription to protect themselves. But they should do that. Now, from the diet angle, please remember this season, the season has changed from Vasanta Rutu to Grishma Rutu, right? From spring to summer. In this season, we need to ensure that we typically will focus on sweet, bitter, and astringent taste, right? You'll see something below. I've told you astringent is like pan. So after food, this is a good time, this next 2 months, to have a pan with gulkand, not the chuna and not the other solutions, but a simple betel nut, this thing with a good gulkand if you can get, or even the betel nut, plain betel nut will be very good in this season. Bitter is, of course, Karelas of the world. Sweet is not the typical, meva barfis and this thing, but good, nice, homemade, simple sweets if you can make, it's very good. Whatever, a kheer which is made well, jaggery made drink, sugarcane juice, etc., would be, and this is applicable for non-diabetics, of course. So diabetics cannot take too much sweet, but I'm telling in general, for healthy people, this is there. People might think that salads are good. Avoid raw foods of any kind, right? Whether it is half-boiled egg, green salad. Green salads are good for Europeans and Americans, not for Indians. You'll see that Indian tradition, we cook all our vegetables. In fact, palak is heavily cooked, right? So we are not cows, we are not cattle, we cannot digest it. Avoid raw foods, right? In general, sattvic food. Sattvic food, how do I define it? That which is easy to digest for me. At the end of that, I feel light, I feel pleasant, I have no irritation in the stomach, right? And I have no burning sensation, no heaviness, all of that, right? So the same food, it is not the food which is bad. It is with when you have it, with what you have it, how do you cook it? That is what makes a good food into a bad food. So don't think, let's not have discussions about is, chicken good for health or not good for health. Chicken is good for somebody at some place at some time, cooked in a particular way. Or a mutton is okay. It's not that red meat is bad or good. It depends on when I'm eating and so on and so forth. It's easily digestible food is very important. Stick to freshly prepared light vegetarian food. That is very clearly coming through. I'm using the word vegetarian at this time because if one wants to protect, go towards vegetarian. There's enough data and more showing our Indian simple vegetarian food can be easy. If you want to take non-veg food, since you're very much used to it, ensure that you have it during lunch and it is well cooked, not lightly cooked, not too oily, not with excess masalas. It should not disturb and aggravate your stomach. Dinner should be your lightest meal, preferably before dusk or around dusk. I know it's all very difficult in India. We are all used to having late dinners and TV and so on, but 7 to 8 latest, try to have your meal. Avoid yogurt. Yogurt is not good in general. I know all of us Indians are used to a diet of yogurt. No yogurt. Avoid cereals like oats. In the breakfast cereal, it is drying. This is the Vata season. If you have time, we'll quickly take you into Vata Pitta Kabha. So avoid oats and breakfast cereals because they're drying the body. This is a Vata time. It will aggravate Vata. And this is a time when Kabha in the body is reducing. This will increase Kabha. Millets are not advisable at this time. Avoid oily, deep fried snacks, etc. Maida items, paneer, right? Reduce the paneer. Even if you have to have the paneer, have more of vegetables and have a light paneer addition. Avoid leftover meals because there's basically only calories but no nutrition, right? Oats and millets is repeated here. And then cheese, cold and aerated drinks as far as possible, avoid it. Avoid Bengal gram, beans, and difficult to gas-causing food items, chanas and all that. Avoid use of milk at night. It's pretty evident here. Drink warm water, right? Lukewarm water, if not warm water as far as possible. Warm water in a hot season. And all the dals which are mentioned here include the vegetables that are mentioned here. Fruits, banana, melons, grapes, pomegranate, and mosambi. Drink adequate water. And there is a, in general, for people with a history of inflammation or respiratory ailments, with a history, not active, if they buy the shadanga, they can buy it in an Ayurveda store, take the shadanga and make a drink, and that you can sip through the day. All of this will build up immunity. The lifestyle part, avoid day sleep. It is clearly for people with poor metabolism, diabetics, the clear contraindicated behavior. Never after meals take a bath, take lukewarm water bath. In the summer, we'll be tempted to take cold water bath. I mean, you can't get it cold, obviously, but in people who live in apartment blocks where it comes from a water tank, which is cold, they should ensure that they will make it lukewarm before they take a bath. Ensure good hygiene, ventilation, sunlight, no moisture. Do gargling when you can, right? So there are two things to do. When you wake up in the morning, take a teaspoon of till oil and do oil pulling. That is, put it in your mouth and just gently move through your teeth. You'll find it one of the best things to do. Your teeth will be shining, your mouth, oral cavity will be completely cleaned up. You know, when you move through your teeth, you'll suddenly see that oil will become white in the morning. And when you spit it out, and after that, you brush your teeth, you are got a kind of $1 million smile, a completely fresh breath. It's much, much more than any toothpaste or any mouth oral chemical can do, but very classical. Similarly, if there's a beginning of some type of infection during the day sometime, or later in the morning itself, one wishes one can mix a little water, a little turmeric and salt and water, and then do gargling, which will really help to disinfect the whole area. Ensure that the nasal passages that one has got, the airways totally, is neither too dry nor too wet. Now that's difficult. If I got a cold, I should see that how do I either dry it up, right? So I can do something called dhupanam, where I'll inhale turmeric fumes, which will dry up my air passages. If it is too wet, that is too wet. If it is too dry, I may need to put a couple of oil drops, right? So there are special thailas called anutaila. One can put 2 drops in each nostril, or the doctor will advise that if required, if it's a major issue, so that through that the nasal passages are appropriately dried up, so that they have that immunity when a virus would attack through the nasal passages. Yoga, there are some specific asanas being recommended here for improving lung function, for improving digestion, and improving overall health and immunity. I need to tell, I will be talking about the mind in the subsequent slide, but please remember, the mind is the hidden, let's say the most important piece which we completely ignore. We think we are only treating the body. So, whereas actually it is the mind which is so critical, and the Anuloma Viloma Pranayama, doing it 21 times in the morning, when you wake up, when you get out of bed, before you get out of bed, sit down and just do 21 times Anuloma Viloma Pranayama. You can do it during the day twice. Any stresses that happen, your neurological functioning, your brain functioning, right? Your immune system, everything will be aligned. It is the most amazing, simple thing to do, costs nothing. Surya Namaskar, if you were to do 10 a day or 11 a day, you'll ensure that your body has got sufficient exercise. So take those simple things, not a very complicated, big step. Take the baby steps, but which will be life-changing in all respects. Reduce sensory inputs. What each one of us would have realized in the last 4 weeks that we've been under lockdown, or 3, exactly 4 weeks, getting to be 4 weeks now, that we have learned to live with lesser noise, with lesser sensory inputs. But some of us still probably are getting a deluge of Netflix and Amazon Prime and the movies and drinking or eating and the taste. Suddenly there is nothing external to do. So I end up external in the sense outside the house. So I need to moderate the sensory inputs. I need to choose what I want to bring in, because please remember, good food is not only good food for the body, it is good food for the mind. Do I bring in things which are wholesome, holistic? Do I watch negative energy generating programs, right? I need to make that choice, because I might get so focused on immunity at the physical level that I miss the fact that sensory inputs is what is going to determine how my innate mental, spiritual immunity is. Because when I have a disease, I can at a spiritual level attack it. What is spiritual? It is my making sense of my life, where I am, what am I doing in life, etc. Then when I have a clarity of understanding of that, my mental response has changed and my physical response of the body itself will fight back. Or intellectually, I can rationalize and then correct it. Or at the body level, I can build immunity. But throughout all this, moderate the inputs, the food, and the sense and the mental inputs. Reduce multitasking. When you're doing one thing, focus on that one thing. Just do one thing at a time. You'll find yourself a happier person. And please remember, a lot of people. 2 days back, there was a news of I think the CEO or MD and CEO of BMW India at 47 dying. Right? We of course, may his soul rest in peace, and may his family really, manage this, irreparable loss at such a young age. It's a tragedy. But when we see this immediately, what do we think? We think, is it sleep? Is it exercise? What is it? I think everything should be done with Ardha Shakti. Any work that you do, any exercise you do, any eating you do, eat to half your capacity. Don't do full capacity, 75%. If you're able to learn to eat to half your capacity, you'll find that you'll feel lighter, better, mental inputs, exercise, everything. And exercise in particular, there are many people who come back from work and go for a late night workout. Not recommended at all, because it disturbs the sleep. People might say it does not, but it's actually, awakening. It is making oneself more alert. Whereas the natural biorhythm, you can't change, because the biorhythm is established over thousands of generations, cannot be disturbed, which is why it is very important. Exercise, there is a proper time. For everything, there's a right time. Stress management, I'm down to my last few slides. Please remember, stress and mind. This is very important. The stress is something that I have no choice over. It is going to come to me. Whether stress becomes eustress, which is good stress, which helps me to respond to those stresses in life as a positive challenge and makes me to overcome them, or whether it becomes mal stress, negative stress, depends on me. It is not the stress, because stress is inevitable. But how I respond to it is in my control. So figuring out that physical, mental, spiritual harmony within helps me to deal with stresses much better. To understand that I have a particular circle of influence. Beyond the circle of influence, and I should always choose to expand that circle of influence, but that which is beyond my circle of influence, I should not worry about, fret about. That which I cannot do anything about today, right? I'm very clear, I should prepare, but that which I cannot, I let it go, right? To make the shift, which is that always wanting to be in control and telling that, see, look at all the people who are control freaks. Maybe I also come into that segment to a great extent. But the control freaks all have to realize now that it is not in the control. Just one single microbe could come, antigen could come, and totally get the entire 7 billion people of the world into their houses, right? That shift internally to realize that harmony within and harmony with my environs, that shift, recognize that basic need to interdepend and live, right? Not to take anything for granted, not only for ourselves, but for future generations. Go back to nature, simplify life, don't complicate it, don't bring in more and more and more, simplify life. And this point about three gunas, right? So we have heard this is a very important part, because Ayurveda is not just physical, mental, it is also spiritual. So the three gunas refer to the sattva, raja, tamas. Rajas is people whose actions are driven by passion. Tamasic people are those people whose actions are driven by ignorance or darkness. People who do unnatural things, right? Or snacking at 2 o'clock in the night, have a binge, right? Do things which are totally contrary to the rhythm of life. Rajasic are people who's a dog eat dog, winning at all costs, right? Win, lose. I have to win, you have to lose. It's not about win-win. So Rajasic is that. A sattvic person, on the other hand, is somebody, no human being is without all the three gunas, right? They will have at different points of time these gunas manifesting. Why I'm bringing this up? The world has become what it has become today because of a preponderance of the rajas and the tamoguna in the world and amongst all of us. Unless a little bit of clarity, statesmanship, compassion, care for other human beings, other animals, all living beings comes in, right? That comes from the greater equanimity and calmness within. We are not going to be able to solve these problems. These problems are going to only become more and more severe, right? The fact is that the COVID-19 is only a reminder. As one famous Acharya says, whenever illness strikes, it should be taken as a sign of good fortune, for it gives us an opportunity to pause and introspect. What have I done in my physical, mental, spiritual life hitherto that caused this disease to come? Can I do something now to reverse it? My behavior. So I take responsibility for my life and the world around me. So change begins with me. That is what our acharyas would say. And I think it is nothing to do with religion. It is the mark of wise people of any religion. This study comes from Harvard, one of the world's most long-lasting happiness studies. And for all corporate colleagues who are here, this would be very useful to know that when we give a lot of importance, this is called the famous Grant study. I urge you to go and look it up on the net. It's carried over 70 years from 1920s or 30s in Harvard University. They tracked people right through till 2000. And then they saw, and maybe the study still continues to see what did they feel across life. What did they find that people who age, they're generally, who are happy, are free of genetic factors. Barring the rare case here or there, by and large, we can live a long, happy life, irrespective of the genes that we begin with. So because we all have genes which are very diverse, and we are all mongrels. The clear thing, the 6 factors which was here, at age 80, they found the top quartile of Harvard graduates: a stable marriage, a mature, adaptive, a very adaptable person, no smoking, little use of alcohol, regular exercise, and normal body weight. Very key. What a simple, beautiful, rule to go by. When we are old, our lives become the sum of all whom we have loved. It is not important to waste anyone to love, right? And in doing so, please remember that when our corporate careers are done with, our achievements in life are done with, it is these relationships, which is the last part which I'm telling. Good relationships keep us happier and healthier. So look at getting into deeper, meaningful relationships. Worry less about cholesterol and more about gratitude and forgiveness. When I meet people, I've got to get you into my skin. How do I interact and connect with you, right? This type of human connect, I think it's time for us to revisit these very basics of life. So the life purpose is Ayurveda, in 400 AD, Ashtanga Hridaya has sutras, Sthana has told about the fourfold purpose of life. To achieve this dharmartha, the 4 purusharthas of dharma, artha, kama, moksha, one should have a long life. And to achieve a long life with fulfillment, obedience to the signs of Ayurveda is of foremost importance. Let us not think good health is absence of disease. It is the enablement of wholesomeness, fullness, positivity within us. So I realize I have 7 minutes to my time. I have a few more slides which quickly I just want to go over, so that in the time available before we go to Q&A, I've gone ahead of my clock. So I'll come back to the slide later. So people should just remember that when we get blood pressure or any such issue in our 4th decade of life, the problems have started when in my teens. So health change and disease happens, unlike the virus attack, which is an onslaught. Within 1 to 14 days, it will manifest. This is something which is a lifelong disease. We tend to think that, particularly Indians, right? We are all notorious for postponement. And we don't do the things today which can help us to have that long life, productive life. So this is very important to know. It takes time. And this is very important to know again, that when I get diagnosed with diabetes, 10 years before that, the insulin resistance has already peaked. And I become pre-diabetic. I realize I'm pre-diabetic about 5 years before I actually become the full onset. But many people come to know only when it comes here at the onset of diabetes. So please understand that that disease, as we speak, various things are happening in our body. Don't postpone taking action today. And nip it in the bud before it becomes a difficult thing. Because insulin resistance, once it peaks, remains at the peak, right? Ayurveda can, of course, help, but very precisely it can help. But please understand that take responsibility for your own health. And looking after the brain is very, very important. Aging of the brain happens with multitasking, excessive, and with aging, multitasking ability comes down, memory is affected, it appears. And steady thinning of the prefrontal brain cortex, which is the most important part of the brain. It differentiates us from many of the animals. Because the volume of the brain is typically tending to decline over age, what studies have shown that pranayama, the proper yoga exercises, the right diet, you can reverse brain deterioration. So going and adopting something as healthy as yoga into your life, healthy diets and a rhythmic diet and lifestyle is going to be very much important for protecting your brain and preventing the Parkinsonisms and the dementias and so on of the older age. So protect it from a young age itself. And understand that how do I get this Kabha Pitta Vata cycle, how do I delay this decline towards death, right? This middle age, old age. Can I push the curve more to the right? I can understand that from a Ayurveda perspective. This is a study which is a 50-year-old study or 55-year-old study, 58-year-old study, but still very, very important. Just doing the simple things of life regularly, people live longer, people live disease-free, right? This is global data, nothing to do with Indians or Ayurveda. So it's very clear. Ayurveda is positing virtually the same thing. So as we told here earlier about the grand study, similarly, Ayurveda also tells what is the sadvritta to live, to constant nourishment of the body and long life. There are certain practices that are told, right? In those days, they are told about non-indulgence in alcohol. Indulgence, please note. Those who would like to drink should drink responsibly with moderation. So this totality of behaviors is all told there. If we can still look at it and recalibrate our own relationship with ourselves and with the world, I think we have a chance to really go into the next phase of life with unlimited positivity. So we are down to about 3.5 minutes. So I'll quickly show a few slides and then understand that Vata, Pitta, Kabha are at one level, you can look at it as function, structure, and transformation of the body. So by looking at it in a totally different way, so this is a scope for another program some other time, but Tridoshas are not just some ephemeral concept, but they're very clearly understandable. And once all educated Indians understand this, right? The uneducated Indians believe in it. The educated Indians, once they understand it, will also believe it implicitly because it'll all make sense to you in your own life. Which is why you'll find many big influencers are coming and endorsing Ayurveda today, because in their own life, when everything else failed, it was Ayurveda which reversed the disease to its root cause, brought in positive health and well-being. So please understand time and ritus are all of this, time of day. So how does it matter? My behaviors depend on what time of day I do, what stage of digestion. Do I go to sleep immediately after lunch? Do I go to sleep 2 hours after lunch? Do I sleep before lunch? In which weather, what do I do? In which season, what do I do? The same food which I eat at the age of 65 and the food which I eat at 40 and at 20 has totally different impact. The food is good, but I am not the same. My ability to digest is different. So my metabolic ability is changing with time. And that is exactly what we're telling here. And during the day, again, as I told, time of day, you have these doshas changing. So I should know which is the right behavior at which time. So the upper half is the day and the bottom half is night. Once you understand this, many things in the environment will become clear to you. With the ritus or the seasons, again the Vata, Pitta, Kabha are changing. Why is this important to know? We are right now in Grishma Ritu, hot and dry. When the Vata goes up and Kabha is now going to, from the peak in the last season, the Kabha is now moderating up, which is why in one sense it's fortunate for most of the people with respiratory issues of the wet type, right? All those people will find it much easier now because the bad weather of Vasanta for them has changed now, right? So you have to understand the next 6 months will be good for them. So they are going to move out of the higher risk now to a low risk period now. And similarly, each taste the food is medicine. If I understand certain rules, I just want to tell you there are rules. And with these rules, if I understand what I eat for myself based on my prakriti, which is my constitution, and my vikriti, which is my deviated state of constitution, a doctor can prescribe to you the right food for you. And in general, that is what we recommended earlier. What is the right taste for a particular season? What is the type of guna? Guna is, is it cold or hot? And is it dry or, wet and oleating? And similarly, the trigunas we spoke. My last slide, the Ayurveda is a mainstream play. Today for COVID, there are many excellent doctors, clinics, hospitals across the country. Many of them are NABH accredited. They're insurance approved for cashless treatment. The CGHS approved, right? So it is now positioned finally 70 years after independence in the country of its origin, right? And the mother system of medicine is slowly gaining mainstream status. So people have a choice to take treatment like you would go to one of the mainstream Apollo Fortis, Narayana Hridayalaya type of hospitals, or Aster hospital. You could go to an Ayurveda hospital also and ask for a cashless inpatient medical care for all these mainstream medical conditions where surgery is not required, right? So if you look at that, for all the chronic diseases as also the communicable diseases in future, you can consider this for you and your family, including pediatric developmental disorders across the mainstream conditions. So with this, I come to a conclusion of this is my email ID. If anybody would like to, of course, write to me, feel free to do that. And before I go to question and answer, thank you very much, CII, for this opportunity to share.
Thank you, Mr. Vasudevan, for this informative presentation. May I now request you to kindly take the questions in the chat mode. The participants to write your questions, and Mr. Vasudevan will respond to you.
Do we bring the video on, or this will remain the way it is?
I don't think we have questions for the participants.
Okay. Okay, so in case any of you at the CII have something to ask, or welcome to go ahead, or then we should conclude. So Rakesh, should we conclude?
Yes, I would request, I would rather suggest participants that the presentation will be shared with all of you. And we are also recording this webinar, which will be up on the COVID website of CII. So in case you have any doubts, you wish to go to the presentation again, you can kindly download from there. And we will also share a link of the presentation for your future reference. Thank you, Mr. Vasudevan.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sparing so much time with us and giving this information.
Hi, there is a question which is appearing in the Q&A box. If I may read out, sir, for you.
Yes. Yes, please.
So somebody has asked, Ms. Gitika has asked, what is the best way to consume ghee?
I couldn't hear. There's some disturbance. What is the
best? So how much is ghee optimal? What is
Oh,
ghee. What is the best way to consume ghee?
yeah. So the right way to answer that, right? See, there is, first of all, the mistake that very often we do is to say a particular food is good in general. Everything is good for somebody at some place at some time and bad for somebody else at some place at some time. So ghee, for somebody whose digestion is not proper, right, will further, it's like taking a small flame and putting ghee on top of it, will extinguish that flame. On the other hand, if my Agni is weak, I need to, along with the ghee, ensure I'm taking hot food in the afternoon and take just enough so that, how do I know it's appropriate? Because once I finish eating, I should be able to feel light and good. You know, I should feel very happy about the food that I've taken. And so ghee in the afternoon with a dal, hot dal, freshly made rice or sambar, etc., is good to go. And typically a teaspoon a day, etc., no harm in that, provided my Agni is in good shape. If my Agni is not in good shape, the next day when I go to the loo, if I take excessive oil, you'll find that there are, you know, oily stains on the commode. You'll have to flush it twice, right? So it's not just ghee, it is any oily substance. Whereas ghee is the most nourishing substance. If I take it properly and if I have no metabolic issues per se, then I will be able to, every day I can have. And unless the season is such that my Agni is totally down. So I should eat with awareness. I don't know, Miss Deepika or Ritika, her question is fully answered. That is the question she had in mind. So ghee should be had in general. It will improve brain function. It is like gold, a magic substance. The world, you know, tried to put it down for many, many decades. It is not the ghee that you'll find in a burfi. It is a ghee that you get freshly made, and that you add with rice, hot rice, and make it part of home cooking and take it, not a processed food ghee, because we don't know what really you get there. So on the
another question, it is what will be Ayurvedic management techniques for COVID phase 2, which is community transmission, and 3, specifically hyperinflammation stage?
So may I know from whom the question is? Somebody. Okay. Okay. So it's a very good question.
You will.
I've opened the chat window. Oh, questions. Oh, sorry, it must be in questions. Oh, it's in questions. Oh, I'm so sorry. Now I got it. Ms. Geetika was the first person. Okay. Right. What will be Ayurvedic management? Yeah, that's right. So see, the community transmission, as we told here very clearly, that is what we have to be prepared for. That is why we said internal immunity is what we have to prepare, because apart from external immunity, which is to protect ourselves from contacting the right behaviors, with the right behaviors to prevent ourselves from contracting the disease, the internal immunity is for community transmission. But the hyperinflammation stage, etc., we have not been given a chance. But let me just tell you one piece of data. Again, this is brought out by the Chinese media. We can't verify it right now, and it's media and papers from in China, that 90% plus of the serious patients in China who are admitted were given traditional Chinese medicine. And you'll see a huge overlap between the Chinese herbs and Ayurveda herbs. Because as you know, it was an Indian monk who went to China many millennia back, and that was the beginning of TCM. So there is a common root, there's the same Panchamahabhuta approach. So they use these same herbs, and their data says that about 95% of those who were given those TCM medicines recovered without any difficulty. So there is a scope to give Ayurveda medicines in hyperinflammation stage. I'm happy to tell you that the Ministry of Ayush has brought out guidelines just recently, 2 days back, which permits allopathy hospitals and Ayurveda service providers to collaborate and potentially add on Ayurveda medicines to these patients, right, in a controlled way, and to see how Ayurveda can help. Because I cannot claim, I'm quite sure Ayurveda can help with this pneumonia patients, with the active, the breathing difficulty, acute respiratory dysfunction syndrome. All these cases, Ayurveda will be able to definitely do higher level of support, right, and to reduce the inflammation across the body. So what I didn't mention here, the Ayurveda interventions and medicines, because this was purely on immunity, I did not want to go into treatment. Our approach would be correct the metabolism. Our approach is to reduce the inflammation in the body, digest all unnecessary toxins floating around, bolster the respiratory system and the cardiac system. When I say cardiac, let's say the cardiovascular system. So through this overall approach that you're giving, and the Rasayana, what I've told is a magical medicine, I would encourage everybody to try those medicines, the Kushmanda, Rasayanam, etc., is extremely nourishing. So these things we can really bring in a stage-wise, and we have a protocol, incidentally, I would say, Mr. Vinay Kumar, that AyurVAID has developed. If allopathy hospital, somebody is interested to collaborate and see, we would be happy to talk to them.
Okay, there's another question.
Yes.
Zinc and vitamin C intake will help to boost immune system. Chyawanprash will help for the same?
Yeah, see, I think all these intakes we have to do when our basic food itself is incomplete. What is the best diet for me, please understand, is the diet of my maternal grandmother. Because it is not the food which is good or bad, it is my ability to digest which matters. So whether zinc and vitamin, there's a natural deficiency in the food I eat, I have to compensate, right? But as such, a balanced diet of my people is the best thing for me. What is good for a Maharashtrian is not good for an Oriya. What is good for a Haryana person is not good for a Tamilian. So we have to stick to that. Chyawanprash certainly is a very good Rasayana medicine. We have given you an alternate. Chyawanprash everybody tends to eat, but you should, typically diabetics cannot have that. Kushmanda Rasayanam in general can be had. It is very good Rasayana, and in case there's a deficiency as seen in your blood reports, you may then look at correcting the deficiency. But Mr. Prathamesh, I don't have a specific thing to to tell that take this or take that chemical, because those chemicals are only part of a small part of the larger immunity puzzle. We are hearing not to eat sweet. Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. So Mr. Gurudas Parwani is telling we are hearing not to eat sweet. See, the key thing we have to understand is everybody wants a simple, black and white answer. Now, let's say I'm in Delhi. The heat is going to be in the 40s. In Bangalore, it is in the mid 30s. Now, at this time, my vata is going to go up. This is the time vata is basically neurological dysfunction, let's say. As it goes up, and my kabha, that is basically my structure, is going to be under threat and pressure. By bringing in the sweet, not excessive sweet, the right kind of good quality sweet, right? So even fruits are sweet. So if I take light, good sweets, it is going to reduce the vata and improve the kabha in the body. It is protective. So during the season, but diabetics need to take careful. People who have got respiratory issues should be careful, not going and taking sweet, telling I have a license to eat sweet. In the next Ritu, you're going to give a different, I'm happy to come back the next thing and do a 20-minute slot in the next season and to tell you, what are the right things to eat in that season. So I hope, Mr. Gurudas, the answer is clear. We're recommending sweet rasa in general for most people other than diabetics and people with respiratory issues and whose metabolism is okay, and to eat it in moderation. Best diet in COVID as fruits are not available in market. I'm sure they'll be back very soon, Mr. Deepak. But as we told, light, fresh khana, dal, chawal, freshly cooked sabji, and chas pina, amras pina. These are the kind of things which you'll do. Coconut water, and this shadanga panyam, which I've told there for people, if you can get it, it is generally going to be immunorestorative. Yeah. For the millennials, very, very important. Ms. Ashwini Thakkar has told, what do you do for the millennials? See, that is the beauty of this all. I think what the millennials need to do is to actually see, two parts. I've shown you a slide of how, from a cardioprotective angle, people today in their 30s or 20s have health profiles of people in their 50s earlier, or in their 40s. Already you have, morbid obesity. You have, very high cholesterol, hypertension in their people in the early 20s, forget people in their teens. So very clearly, they need to understand that this is a marathon race. It is not a sprint or a 1500-meter race. So the millennials have to understand that, a short-term fix is not really going to help. So nourish the body, take responsibility. Ayurveda is perhaps, forget about medicine, because see, please understand, when Ayurveda as a science of longevity, right? It is the knowledge of longevity. Longevity is not just living long years, and people might not know that our species has a sanctioned longevity of 120 years. But today you'll see at 40, 50, people are telling, okay, time to retire. 60 some will say, my body is already into that phase. So millennials have to be told your life potential is 120. If you would do with awareness, you can live that 120 years and live a life to the fullest with full meaning. So I think Ayurveda is the main pathway to that entire promised land of good health and a fulfilling life. Raw food. So somebody's asked about raw food or not consuming raw food. See, one question I would ask, what is the difference between vegetables and fruits? If you were to tell, the first, I wish you could have made it interactive. So people might say that, you know, is tomato a fruit? Is apple a vegetable? Right? So you'll say apple is vegetable, tomato is, you know, possibly a fruit, a vegetable. One key difference is the extent of sugar that is there in that particular product, right? The other thing is fruits are those vegetables which can be eaten raw. You'll see the Indian tradition, by and large, you will see we do not eat anything raw. Kuch bhi nahi. Anything we eat, we'll do some bagar, some seasoning, just do that little bit. Even that moong, sprouted moong, you eat it directly, as you know, today is a fashion in many buffets, right? It's going to increase vata or nervous disorder in the system. It is important to do a light cooking. So when you say raw food does not, so why do we say raw food? Because the habit today is to go and take the salad bowl and say, feel very happy that, you know, I've done justice by putting all those other toppings on top and, you know, all the sauces on top. Actually, you can see that it's only animals which can regurgitate are eating these raw leaves, cabbage and, you know, lettuce and stuff like that. So it is increasing vata, it is reducing metabolism in the body. So Prakriti Chikitsa, incidentally, in my humble submission, is not a science. It is just a bunch of techniques. Some people do it. It probably benefits people who are already overeating and, you know, something on a lightened diet. But Ayurveda is, you know, it is time tested over millennia. And there's a complete pharmacology, dietary science, anatomy, pharmacology, pathogenesis, disease origination, disease progression, disease reversal, positive, everything is there. I would not take naturopathy and Prakriti Chikitsa in the same basket as Ayurveda, with all due respect to the practitioners of the science, because Ayurveda is a science. Yeah, I think Vinay Kumar, I think his question, I hope, has been answered. Yeah, there's a recommendation to have Chyawanprash. See, no harm provided your Agni is good. Anand Kumar has asked about having Chyawanprash every day. If my Agni is good and there's no harm in taking, there are many such you know, rasayanas which are there. Chyawanprash will definitely be a good thing to consider. No harm in taking it, certainly. But that's not the only thing. And in the context of the respiratory aspect which we are having, considering the type of issues in this season that we're talking about, we have made a specific recommendation. Chyawanprash is we have come up with general immunity and specific immunity into one cup. Chyawanprash is a general immunity recommendation. Ours is a very specific immunity recommendation. Yeah, so somebody feels digestion issues and pain in joints. So basically, these are signs of inflammation, Mr. Deepak Sharma. And I think it is important for you to consult. I just want to tell everybody, if you go to AyurVAID.com, there is our website, you'll find a link to a form, which you fill up, you'll get a free risk assessment, because you'll find that some of these issues which you're talking about will be uncovered, and whether you are at a low risk or a moderate risk or a severe risk, you can do a free risk assessment. Just go to the site, click the link and fill up the form. Our doctors will revert to you. The risk rating is free. It's one of its kind. It's comprehensive in doing that. It gives you a full picture. I think yeah. Yes, I think I've probably answered all the questions here. And once again, Rakhi, Elizabeth, Deepa, and Sayoni, and the entire CII team, and all the participants who joined us for the meeting. Thank you very much for joining. And in case you would like to talk to me or write to me, please feel free to just send a mail to my ID, please.
Thank you.
And namaste.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all the participants. Keep safe. And as we are scheduling our next webinar, we will inform you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.